Jodgecast.
Hello and welcome to Jodgecast with myself, Joe Bowden, and this guy,
Jay Taylor.
This week is a very special episode of our State of the Sitcom mini-series where we are discussing the iconic tradition of British sitcoms, the Christmas special.
For this very special episode, we're delighted to be joined by the multi-award winning sitcom legend, who's writer of classics like Vicar of Dibley, My Hero. He's produced, he's commissioning editing for BBC Radio 4, Mr. Paul Mayhew-Archer. Hello, Paul.
Hello.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much indeed.
Don't know if we've ever done an introduction quite as multi-hyphenate as that. So,
Well, my name's already hyphenated, so have a few more.
So yeah, as we mentioned there, Paul's worked on a number of UK sitcoms and other types of series, Spitting Image, the ECO Trot Christmas special that came out a couple of years ago with Dustin Hoffman and Judi Dench. So yeah, it's a very seasonal episode.
It is, but before we come on to all that, we know you've been working on a very different creative output. So would you like to tell us what you've been up to recently?
Yes, well, 2 years ago, 7 years ago, I was diagnosed with Parkinson's, and I decided to sort of find the funny side in it. And then a few years ago, I made a documentary about Parkinson's called Parkinson's: The Funny Side. And then I got the chance to take part in a fundraiser at the Albert Hall. So I did a couple of minutes introducing the I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue teams, because I used to produce I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue on the radio years and years and years ago. So I did a couple of minutes of stand-up at the Royal Albert Hall, and I rather loved doing that. So then I did 10 minutes at the Comedy Store, and they asked me back, so I did another 10 minutes at the Comedy Store. And then I thought, why not do an hour at the Edinburgh Festival? So I did an hour at the Edinburgh Festival just last August. And then I thought, actually, why not take it on tour? So now I'm taking my show on tour around the country in 2019. And I am aware that I started at the Royal Albert Hall, went to the Comedy Store, did my one-man show in a basement in Edinburgh. So I think the next port of call is a series of public conveniences around the country.
Yeah.
I realise I'm on a steadily downward trajectory.
Get more and more intimate, I think.
Yes, I think that's it, exactly.
And the show's called Incurable Optimist.
The show is called Incurable Optimist, yes. And hopefully if you give a link to it, people will be able to find it. I'm going from everywhere, from Glasgow and Edinburgh down to Tiverton, down to Brighton and up to Newcastle. I'm dotting all over the place next March, April, May and the beginning of June.
Amazing. And I mean, it sounds quite interesting because, coming from working in TV and radio and stuff like that, so, very scripted. How has that been doing the reverse of the traditional route into, so a lot of people go from stand-up into TV.
Yeah.
How's that been kind of flipping that on its head?
Well, it's weird, isn't it? I mean, I loved performing. I mean, I performed at Cambridge. I did a couple of reviews with Andy Hamilton and some other friends, and we took them to the Edinburgh Fringe, but we weren't spotted that year. And and then I sort of just got into, I did teaching, and then I got into radio producing, and somehow the performing got lost and left behind. And I suddenly realized that all the other people around me were much better at performing, and so I didn't do it. And now, strangely enough, it's taken Parkinson's to show me that actually I can do the performing bit, and I really enjoy it. It's a really weird thing because my show is, it's not just about Parkinson's, it's also about cancer, depression, suicide, and all those sorts of subjects of serious illness. But people seem to find it uplifting, and it's given me a subject, and it's given me a whole new career. So it's a very weird experience to be, doing something completely new at the age of 65 when one is, the new thing that one is meant to be doing is not very much at all. And
Slightly different to golf, isn't it?
Very different to golf, yes.
But yeah, the documentary was Parkinson's The Funny Side,
Yes.
which was a BBC documentary. But the humour really did kind of come through on that. And
It's not your classic topic for comedy mining.
No.
So how has it been? Sort of the reactions that people have had to sort of focusing on the funny side.
Well, the amazing thing is that people seem to really love it. I mean, and it seems to have touched a chord with people, because I think I talk about, I think people with serious illnesses often are dying to have dying, I'm sorry, I shouldn't, well, that they are gasping for, no, they are hoping to have some laughs, actually, because there is a danger that you just become completely defined by your illness. And because it's a serious illness, and we're told it's a serious illness, we forget that actually there can be humour. I mean, I do stuff for Maggie's, the cancer support charity with Maggie's Centres, because they seem to recognise that humour is important, and so they ask me to write funny bits and pieces for them occasionally, and I do that because they seem to want to have a laugh. And years ago, when my mum died of cancer, that was an entirely serious thing. So I've been in a house where there wasn't any laughter, and I've realised as a result the importance of having laughter around, even when you're dealing with a serious illness, as it were. I mean, they say, laughter is the best medicine, and it's rubbish, obviously, because in my case, cinema is the best medicine. But laughter helps considerably, I have to say.
And I think, it's a way of helping people process as well. And these topics, many people will have experience of these things, so it's a way of kind of being able to process that and move through the difficulties.
Well, we all have these. We all have these difficulties, and at some stage we're going to get them, because there's a sort of inevitability about it, and as we live, longer and longer, there's the fact that towards the end it's going to become, a bit difficult, and I think there are certain issues. My wife hates me talking about, farting and pooing. Actually, I find them very funny subjects, but I am aware that it was very funny when my mother-in-law used to go around the house jet propelled by farting that she seemed to be completely unaware of, and I'm now aware that I'm doing the same.
Yeah.
And I think
side effect.
And I think that people, we don't sort of talk about those things. And the danger is, because we don't talk about those things, people think that they're alone in having these problems. And if we can share them and get them out and get them all out into the open, as it were, I think it does us all very good. Well, I have various stories about those things in my show.
Fantastic. And
yeah, I was just thinking about in a lot of your work that I've seen of yours in sitcom is sort of the hallmark of what you're doing is observational comedy, sort of being able to take things and look at them in a slightly different manner and translate them to the screen. And you can already hear how that's kind of informing just the more personal side of doing a stand-up show about something that you've gone through. I'm really excited to see that and how you've handled that.
It's about trying to see it from a slightly different viewpoint. I mean, I was thinking that if you try to find the positive side in all this, for example, I've started to have real difficulty getting out of the bath. But on the positive side, I really like having a bath. So, in fact, I could spend an extra half hour in there and say at the end, well, I was trying to get out, but
I didn't mean to spend.
No, I didn't mean to spend half the day in there. I just couldn't get out. And there are things. There was a couple I met, and it was wonderful. He had a model railway set, and his wife said, and he had got advanced Parkinson's, and his wife brought in a model of a church, and she said, "Do you know, it's amazing. Tom made this." And I said, "That's incredible. That's marvelous, Tom." And she said, "Yes, and yet he can't wash up." And I just saw the look on Tom's face that suggested, I think he could wash up. he decided that if he played his cards right, it was something he need never do ever again.
It's that, typical, do a job badly and
You'll never be asked to do it again.
And there are all those positive. The thing is with Parkinson's. I mean, there's a rule outside supermarkets that you are not allowed to shake collecting tins when collecting for charity. But we don't shake our tins. It just so happens that we give the tins to the shakiest members of the branch, and then the disease does the rest.
and and then you're being fined by the
We're
supermarkets.
we're completely free and clear. We make a fortune, as compared to other charities. So it's just
I can't say anything, can they?
I'm just thinking it's just a question of trying to find the a slightly different angle, which is what one always does, I suppose, in comedy. You try to find the slightly unexpected angle or a different idea. You take something. It's got to be something that is observed or something that seems familiar to people, because if they don't recognize it, if they don't relate to it in some way, then they're not going to find it funny. So you've got to find something that is relatable and then twist it in some way. I mean, I'm a huge admirer of the work of Graham Linehan, because he and Arthur, well, with Father Ted and things like that, they took characters to the furthest reaches of believability, but there was always a sort of toehold on reality, so that you recognized, them as real people. I remember Jeff Perkins, who I worked with a lot. He produced Father Ted, and I was involved in the commissioning of Father Ted at Channel 4. And he said the moment he knew there was something special about it was when I think it started life as a special. It was a documentary special about them. And at the bottom of one page of the script, it said, Mrs. Doyle said, "Will you have a cup of tea, Father?" And Father Ted said, "No, thank you, Mrs. Doyle." And he turned over to the next page, and the next page was just, "You will have it, you will."
Go on.
Any writers who can do that are just worth their weight in gold.
It's, I mean, it really. We were thinking about it in terms of Christmas special, because
one of the greatest when they're in the lingerie department is just stunningly.
Just the whole episode, and you have those set pieces that just sing from the screen, and just you can just relive it almost by just seeing it, and the lines, and as you say, the characters are so some of the other priests, and you think, but they're just about believable enough, and they're
heightened.
And because it's based on The Great Escape, and we've all seen The Great Escape, and we can relate to the sort of pastiche level as well.
I think that's a perfect segue into relatability, and something that is relatable definitely across the UK and in other countries as well, which is Christmas.
Yes.
Spending time,
depending on your culture.
Absolutely. But the traditional, what we're talking a lot about, the traditional British Christmas special. So for a lot of people, they did grow up having this traditional British Christmas, and that's where I think the sitcom, that Christmas special, really ties in, because it is when it gets under your skin to relating to things that about your life and your Christmas traditions, and flips them on their head and makes them even more extreme. So a perfect segue into your Christmas specials, which I think are some of the most beloved that we know.
Well, I've been incredibly lucky, because I've worked on Vicar of Dibley, which had lots of Christmas. We did a lot of Christmas specials, and then I also worked on Mrs. Brown's Boys and co-wrote some episodes which were also on Christmas Day. And I did a Christmas special for My Hero as well, which was sort of on the 22nd of December. So I've done quite a few Christmas specials in my time, and well, there are pluses and minuses and scares, really. I mean, the big plus is that, well, it's just the most amazing honour and privilege and delight and joy to be following on in that. Well, it's sort of following on in that tradition of Morecambe and Wise.
Yes.
I mean, I remember growing up, and still to my mind, the greatest sketch of all time is Morecambe and Wise and Andre Previn
Yes.
and the piano. I mean, and my favourite line in all comedy is "I'm playing all the right notes, but not necessarily in the right order." And so to be, to have shows, to have worked on shows that have been on Christmas Day is just a stunningly sort of exciting privilege, really. The scary thing is that, of course, particularly on Christmas Day, you are writing for the expectations are incredibly high.
Yes.
So you're feeling right. A lot of people's Christmases, Christmas Day may not have been the most perfect day for them, but they're looking for a good laugh now, and they need one perhaps more than ever because they've had to put up with the weird uncle or the even weirder aunt during the day. And so that's a sort of pressure. And the scary thing is that it's a different audience because suddenly people are watching with their gran
Absolutely.
and their children, and they're suddenly thinking this program that is normally very funny. Oh, I think it went a bit too far. It was a bit too rude.
Yeah.
I think quite famously, Men Behaving Badly.
Yes. Jingle Balls.
Yeah, got a lot of criticism, and I think the episode was probably no more shocking than other episodes, but it was a different audience that was actually watching it on Christmas. It was a more sensitive audience.
Absolutely.
And people and couples who normally would have said this is absolutely fantastic were suddenly watching the program with their aged granny and think, oh, I'm not sure the BBC shouldn't have put this on.
I'll never forget one year watching Love Actually with my nana, who was 90 plus at the time, and we all forgot the
Right.
Martin Freeman storyline, which was about the port, and we just forgot that it was in there. And of course, when it came up, everything else was fine, and that one thing just didn't sit well.
You can imagine all the blushing, can't you?
Yes, it's interesting because I have on occasions warned my mother-in-law. I remember warning her about Mrs. Brown's Boys. I said, when we started doing Mrs. Brown's Boys, I said, before the first episode went out, I said, I don't think you should watch this. I'm not sure this is for you. And the next day she rang me up and she said, well, I know you warned me, Paul, but I did watch it and I loved it, she said.
Oh, okay.
And she didn't notice the bad language.
And I think that's a really key point, is that the reason when they do become beloved, when Christmas specials do become beloved, it's because as a whole family or whoever you're spending that time with, watch something together and have that experience. It can really, and so then every year it almost becomes a tradition. There are shows and films that people watch every year now, as you say with Morecambe and Wise.
Yeah. I know that the Vicar of Dibley Christmas specials, particularly the Christmas lunch incident, is watched regularly in not just my family house, but all over the country, because it's got that lasting quality of just its enduring funniness that we can all relate to. That kind of, especially with the British politeness thing of not being able to say no to an invitation.
Yes. Well, that is it. I mean, the Dibley started life. I think Richard Curtis's initial thought was, is it possible to create a sitcom around a character who is actually nice and good? Because most sitcoms are centered on monsters in some way.
Yes.
They're either incredibly pompous or they're vain or they're sort of racist or horrible in some other way. They exhibit appalling behaviour and they have a lack of self-knowledge. And he wondered whether it was possible for someone who was essentially good and actually quite sensible in relation to the other characters
and progressive
to be the heart of the sitcom. And I think the Christmas lunch incident sort of typifies the problems that you can get into even when you're a nice person, because if you can't say no and you get 4 invitations to Christmas lunch, you have to take all of them. And then that does lead you into fantastically comical situations. And then you sort of, you push it from there, in a sense. And you make the most of that opportunity that story gives you. I mean,
and you mentioned earlier, obviously you've got the Christmas lunch incident. The second series episode Winter, and then the Christmas special, quite a few Christmas specials. Vicar of Dibley, you had that a lot of the times you were writing to a Christmas brief. Does the process change, or were you just writing a normal Vicar of Dibley episode that happened to be at Christmas? Was that thought process in your mind that you were writing a Christmas special?
You do think about the fact that it's Christmas, and after a while you begin to think there are no more Christmas songs because you are, God, it is difficult really. You sort of, I remember after we'd done the one about the nativity.
Oh yes.
So we'd done the nativity and we'd done the Christmas lunch incident, and you are by then beginning to think, what else is there about Christmas that we haven't actually done? But also because every other show's done Christmas specials.
Exactly. Yeah.
Even the ones that aren't going out on Christmas Day have had Christmas specials. So you've had Christmas specials from 2.4 Children.
Mm-hmm.
You've had countless Christmas specials from One Foot in the Grave, one of my all-time favourite sitcoms. And just there have been so many. So it's not just simply that you yourself have covered all those little incidents that go on at Christmas, but every other show has as well. And it's incredibly difficult to try and come up with, funny ideas based on basically 2 days in the year.
Exactly.
When essentially every family in the country pretty well does the same thing. They all get together and don't get on very well. And that's it. Well, there was one episode of there was a Mrs. Brown Christmas Day special which was a sort of recreation of my family Christmases, which is where you play board games and games.
Yes.
And it ends in disaster. And it always ends in disaster in my family because myself and my dad would always play by the rules, and my wife Julie and her mum just disregarded the rules altogether and just played it as a bit of fun. And those two just approaches to any game, any board game, are completely incompatible, basically, because if you're playing Monopoly properly, you do not let people off when they land on your property. But if Julie's mum, just let Julie off all the time, it just made a nonsense of it, but it made it more fun for them.
I suppose using your own kind of experiences helps kind of give those points of difference which make those stories unique. So when you're looking for finding what are you going to do for your particular series that you're working on at that time, and I really like that. But the thing that I always find interesting, and I'm always interested as to how people strike that balance between a story that's comedic but also really heartwarming. And I think that's a common thread with Christmas specials, is that finding that kind of that heart. How do you go about that?
Well, it comes from the characters, really, I suppose. Christmas ultimately is about being together.
Yes.
And if you can do all of the sort of the horrible stuff about being together and the fact that you don't want people to come, or once they've come you'd rather they went away rather more quickly,
which you did brilliantly in My Hero.
Yes, we did in that. But then ultimately there is a point of recognition that actually you do want to belong, and you do want to be with your family. And I suppose, and in Dibley, well, the nativity, she did actually give birth.
Yes.
And it was an incredibly, moving moment when Alice finally gives birth and is a mum. And in the Christmas lunch incident, it ends with the bloke coming round and asking her to marry him, and then turning out that he doesn't want to marry her, he wants to be married by her. And then it's the villagers who come round and sort of comfort her, as it were, because she's actually on her own on Christmas night. And in Mrs. Brown's Boys, I think the reason Mrs. Brown's so beloved and the elderly folk don't seem to notice the bad language is because at heart it's about a mother, and it's about motherhood, and it's about the fact that this mother, appalling though she is in so many ways, would actually give her life for her children, and you sort of deep down know that. And Brendan, who created it and writes it, he is extraordinary in his awareness of the audience. I remember we recorded one of the Christmas episodes. I think it was a Christmas. Anyway, it was when one of the sons is on the missions and he's not supposed to be able to come home for Christmas.
Mm.
And we did a big farcical scene. I can't remember what it was, but it was followed immediately. Brendan came off having recorded the farcical scene. He said, "You just watch. In 2 minutes, the grannies will be in tears." And he went on, did the next scene, and as he was doing the scene, as the character was doing the scene, the son appeared in the background because he'd been allowed home after all from the missions. And there was audible sobbing in the audience. And this is an audience that, just 10 minutes before had been enjoying a ludicrous farcical scene that is too sort of outrageous panto, and then suddenly they're moved to tears. And I think you can do that, and you can do it in all sitcoms and in all episodes.
Yes.
But it probably becomes more acute in a Christmas episode, particularly if you're playing it to families who are together at Christmas.
Yes, and then as you said, so when Geraldine was alone and unloved at the end of that Christmas lunch, we rewatched that recently, and it really hits home because loneliness is a huge problem at Christmas.
Yes,
both with elderly people and people of all ages, and so that really hit home watching it and kind of realizing
that's the reality.
It's 2 minutes before we're laughing because of the eating a 5th Christmas pudding, and as you say, that being able to balance that perfect timing,
forcing that one sprout back into her mouth. Yeah, it is the joy of sitcom is that I just love those things where you can go from huge big laughs to touching moments, and you sort of you have to have the big laughs in order to earn the touching moments, as it were.
Yes,
and you can affect people very profoundly, it seems to me, in the most wonderful sense.
the Royal Family did. I think I remember that.
Oh, amazing!
That one just really hit between those lines of.
Was it the Nan? Yes,
fantastic,
extraordinary.
Yeah, I think what I found quite interesting is with Vicar of Dibley, all the Christmas specials kind of looked at, despite them being set in this very traditional church-going village, it was a lot of things about how to sort of change up the Christmas thing. So whether that be, having new people around for lunch, or whether it's doing something different with the nativity show, it's all about kind of thinking about new things. But with My Hero, and the concept for this whole show is kind of like, the way I looked at it was about sort of looking at the human experience and examining it and going, well, that's a bit odd, isn't it? And about keeping things, sort of acknowledging that, well, that's a little bit strange, but we're going to do it anyway. Like the whole thing about Christmas lunch being like, nobody likes it, but we're going to eat it, and we're going to eat it for 2 weeks. I always find that was really interesting, that kind of those two different angles of like, we want to do things that are a bit different, and then there's that thing of keeping nostalgia and keeping tradition.
The thing about My Hero, what I really loved, and Paul Mendelson created the show, terrific writer, and working with him on it, the great advantage you have there is the ultimate outsider.
Yes.
So it's the person who looks at our traditions from the point of view of someone who has not grown up with them. So would start to question the very basics of what we do. And we do the oddest sort of things at Christmas. We do eat turkey, even though everybody says, I don't really like turkey very much. Because it's rather dry. And we do eat Brussels sprouts, even though people say I've never really liked Brussels sprouts. It is that weird thing, and everybody sends people cards.
Yeah.
They sort of say, I don't really, like sending cards. It's an absolute pain in the neck, and it's a bother. And yet, if they don't receive a card, they get really upset. And you think, why? Why do they get? There are all sorts of strange traditions in Christmas that we just come blindly without, beginning to reason through them. And if you've got a character who then can point up those things, then that gives you a whole new perspective on Christmas, one that we hadn't explored in Dibley or in Mrs. Brown. So that was why it was so appealing to do that in the My Hero, because thank goodness I've got an idea that I haven't done in the other thing.
New angle to explore.
A new angle to explore, and thank goodness for that. Yes.
Absolutely. And it really was that taking the relatable, and flipping it on its head, and just down to Father Christmas, this person that comes in your bedroom and leaves a present. Why is it upsetting for adults and not for children? There were just so many moments there of, oh yeah, we do this, and why do people?
Yes. Plus the added joy of Hugh Lloyd playing the character.
Yes.
Yeah.
And from Terry Scott and Hugh Lloyd, and right back, a brilliant performer.
Absolutely.
From my childhood.
Well, that's, yeah. I mean, talking of your childhood, you touched on Morecambe and Wise earlier. We knew this tradition straight away as soon as we were almost old enough to watch TV at Christmas, of these specials and you've got to watch Morecambe and Wise, and this was always a part of. So was it always a part of your tradition growing up, of the family sitcom or TV at Christmas?
Well, certainly, yes. I think Christmas TV, I mean, it usually started with us having to finish Christmas lunch by 3 o'clock in order to sit in front of the television and doze off during the Queen's speech. I don't think any member of the family was still conscious by the end of that 10 minutes. It sort of, we were all, gone snoring away. And then after that, there would be, because we only would have the one television, and there was no ability or little ability to record anything. There were the endless rows as to what we should watch. I mean, that was, a huge bone of contention. And then there were the Christmas specials. I mean, I'm trying to remember the first ones that made, apart from the Morecambe and Wise ones, the next ones, I think I was much older, because the next ones that really made an impact on me, huge impact, were the Only Fools and Horses ones.
Yes.
Classics.
And they were absolutely to hull and back. And I don't know whether, I think it was on Christmas Day. It may have not been. Anyway,
I seem to remember them.
Was one of the funniest. And I also had the delight, because I was working at the BBC at the time. I had the joy of reading the episode where they became millionaires.
Oh.
Thanks to the watch, and it was a most extraordinary experience, because I sort of read the script. And I found myself laughing helplessly and being in tears helplessly. And it is one of the, I mean, apart from the fact that the performances were brilliant and it was brilliantly directed and produced in the way that you would hope something would be, it was just on the page an absolute masterpiece. I mean, it was just extraordinary. And it wasn't just that the characters were incredibly familiar to me, of course, and to us all, but it was simply so beautifully done and beautifully judged, and as a script, I mean, just a masterpiece.
We've watched that like every year, I think, I think that was the mid-90s, I think, when that one was on. I think my family have watched that pretty much every year ever since.
It ties back to that perfect balance of familiarity, a little bit different, taking something and changing up the storyline, which often Christmas specials do.
And it was the perfect callback.
And you also have to bear and doing it longer.
Yes.
And because you're doing it long, I mean, all the Christmas special, the Only Fools were longer. And certainly the Dibleys were sort of 45 minutes and towards an hour in some cases. And you sort of have to justify that increased length. Well, the way you do it is sometimes, which I tend to think is the wrong way of doing it, is to put your characters into a new location. So you take them on a world cruise, or you take them into a new sort of on holiday, something like that. And I'm not a huge fan of that, I think, because the location, the world they're in, is a character in itself. But therefore, in order to justify the extra length, you have to have if it's not a bigger story, it's got to have more emotional resonance in some way. It's got to make an impact to justify the fact that it is longer, and not simply that you've sort of been given longer, so we might as well fill it up with something.
Keep everyone awake after the turkey.
Yes, exactly.
Well, we had a few. We asked the question on social media as well about other people's favorite Christmas specials.
Yeah.
And so we've got a few tweets here that I'll read out so we can see what other people have thought. Now, some of these are also US Christmas specials, which
Right.
obviously the difference there is that it's kind of more of it's within season, and it's not really, it's a normal length episode for that particular show.
Yeah.
Whereas in the UK, is very much the tradition of doing, as you say, that kind of not feature length, but yeah, double length.
Their season finales tend to be the bigger thing, don't
Yes.
they?
Yes.
I mean, rather than...
And the difference with the UK is it's traditionally on Christmas Day, and it's that real kind of
Yeah.
So Inside Oz podcast said they always love the one from series 10 of Frasier, which is them trying to swap the presents under the tree with fakes only to keep going back on themselves. It's well done, even for a joke that is as cliche as they come. The whole plan of taking Christmas to Marty at work is just so sweet too.
Do you know, I've never seen that.
It's I remember it. It's again, it does have that balance. They end up upsetting, and then none of the family are spending Christmas together. The end of the episode is the heartwarming, bringing them together.
Yeah, Frasier did a lot of the Christmas episodes as well. Actually,
Am I right in thinking now? I think this is right, that when Cheers started and Cheers gave birth to Frasier, that when Cheers started, it was the lowest rated series of that season,
wow.
and it was going to be axed, I believe.
Wow.
But the wife of the head of the network really liked it, and so persuaded him to give it another chance. Someone told me that, and I hope it's true.
I like to hope that that's a really lovely story.
And the other thing was, when they were trying to think of spin-offs from Cheers, they asked focus groups the question, do you like Frasier Crane? And the answer came back, no. Oh dear, we better not do that then. And then someone thought, actually, are we asking the right question? Would you be interested in a series featuring Frasier Crane as the central character? Yes, came back the answer, because they didn't like him, but they found him absolutely pricelessly funny and interesting.
Focus groups need to ask the right questions, is what we're
You need to ask
Good
the right
lesson there.
question.
So Pod Full of Sunshine said, How I Met Your Mother Christmas episode where Ted sets up the lights to the AC/DC song Highway to Hell just to make Robin happy because she's sad for reasons he doesn't know. Makes me tear up every time.
Oh, you see, it's emotion, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's all coming back to that.
Tearing up, yes, that's what it's about. Christmas, a time for tears.
That almost doesn't sound right, but it does make sense.
It does, doesn't it, in that strange way?
Our friend NY Sean, who works on the Inside Pop podcast, has said the special Christmas episodes are one of my favourite things about British TV. So I think it's what we love about them as well, is that it's a very much a traditional thing. So that's lovely. And he also said he loves how quirky. It's
At the podcast said the Office UK Christmas 2-part finale. Never thought a Yazoo song could make me cry.
But emoji crying.
The moment when she returns and takes Tim. Oh my God! I was absolutely helpless.
That is one of my favourite. If someone was to ask me that 2-part finale, because it does so much. So much.
It's that shot of Tim talking to them, and you just see her appear in the background.
Absolutely.
Just thinking about it is to tears. I'm sorry. It's absolutely perfect.
It really was. And to kind of give everyone who'd embraced that show that moment, and it sticks with you in such a, as you say, heartwarming. You almost cry just thinking about it.
A bit of closure.
For the British series, that was closure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then the genius of the Americans is that they don't take that as closure, and they go on doing endless series. Brilliant. And the characters, they've taken the characters on. Extraordinary.
I really didn't think we'd like the American one, but
I absolutely adore it. Yeah.
Took it somewhere completely different.
My office Christmas tradition is actually taken from the US office. We play a stealing Santa game every year where we steal presents from each other. It's great fun. You end up with all sorts of interesting things.
One of my favourite Christmas ideas that I've seen He's not in a TV sitcom, but it's in Alan Ayckbourn's play Season's Greetings. Alan Ayckbourn was my hero as I was growing up, and I wanted to write like Alan Ayckbourn. And there's, in one of his plays, in Season's Greetings, there's the wife is kissing the wrong man downstairs in the middle of the night, and she accidentally rolls over onto one of the present boxes, and inside there is a noisy present that goes off. And then, as they try to find which present is making the noise, they set off other noisy presents, sort of clocks, toys, and it's such a brilliant idea that you have all these things which could set off alarms and noises, squeaks. It's absolutely brilliant when they're trying to be absolutely secretive, and just lovely.
Beautiful. What play was that? Sorry.
It was in an Ayckbourn play, Season's Greetings, which was revived a couple of years ago at the National Theatre.
Oh, great!
It's a wonderful play,
Fantastic.
and it is about all the horrific Christmases, jumbled together. There's a character whose big ambition, he always puts on a puppet show for the children at Christmas, and nobody wants to watch it. And
we'll have to keep an eye
and
out.
that struck home for me, because when I started, the first thing I ever sort of wrote was when my parents bought me a puppet theatre, and I used to put on puppet shows for my friends. And I found that the more puppet shows I put on, the fewer friends I had, because they were just dreadful. And I was about 10, I think, at the time. And basically the puppets just used to get stuck together because the wires got all entangled. Half the show was me trying to disentangle the two puppets from one another.
I was envisioning finger puppets, but now I can see that marionettes. No,
these were string puppets. And my puppets did sort of get up into the sort of contortions of what was it? The
Team America.
Team America. Yeah. My characters didn't, my puppets didn't know what they were getting up to.
See, I was thinking Sound of Music. So.
Yes. Oh, yes. Much.
No, remember, it's the flatulence,
Our final tweet comes from Miss Orpington. Shout out to the people from Kent. And she says the extras at Christmas special, closely followed by Peep Show. I have to say, I've not seen the Peep Show Christmas special, I don't think.
I haven't. No.
I didn't know, but I remember the extras one being, again, similar to The Office, of just so many touch points.
Yes.
Just brilliant writing.
Yeah, I think what we've found is that the emotional aspects of the storytelling is what really sort of resonates. It's really lovely to see everyone sort of remembering those key moments. It's really nice.
Yes, that's lovely.
As is always the case with State of the Sitcom, we could talk for hours about sitcoms and TV and culture in general. It's been so insightful hearing from someone who's been on both sides. So your experiences of watching, things like Morecambe and Wise, Father Ted, The Office, and then also from the other side of Vicar of Dibley, My Hero, and as I said, ECO Trot, which was something that came out a couple of years ago, which was, it was that Christmas viewing, that kind of must-watch TV. And
well, you hope it's must-watch, because if it's not must-watch, people won't watch, and then it's gone.
Well, it's a bit like the Queen's speech, people falling asleep.
You mentioned earlier about that thing of making sure you finish the lunch in time to be able to sit down and watch whatever it is you've chosen as a family. That you'll all enjoy, and it is that thing of like, we need to be ready by this time.
Yes.
And not too drunk.
And now, because you've got all these different televisions and different platforms, you can all go off into completely different rooms and watch things on your own, and make yourself lonely in order to just watch the television that you want to watch.
Yeah, it's a bit of a...
You can do that, yeah.
You don't do that. You have a proper family Christmas.
I hope it's a tradition that does still live. I mean, I think it still lives on in our houses. Mm-hmm. And I think from a lot of people that we've seemed to have heard on social media and talking about it, my mum said it was one of the times that they did watch TV growing up.
Yeah.
So I think it's...
Actually, for a few years, I did actually hold a Christmas party on Christmas night.
Oh.
Sort of 15 or 20 friends round, and we would play Christmas games on Christmas night. So one of the guests said one year, we played this game last year. And I thought, I'm getting a bit boring now. So I'll stop.
Hang on. I'll get out my puppets.
Yes, I'll get out. Yes, that would have sent them away far, far sooner.
right. Well, thank you so much for all of your insights. It's been really interesting and very funny as well. So
Yeah.
we really appreciate you coming on the show. Just
Not
so our listeners know, where can they find you online, and where can they see you in your upcoming tour?
Well, in March. I'm at the Soho Theatre.
Which is a lovely venue.
Then I'm going to then Glasgow, then Edinburgh, then Chipping Norton, Tiverton, Bristol, New Milton, which I think is in the New Forest. I don't actually know where it is. Newcastle, Otley, Selby, Bath, Brighton, Brighton again. I'm doing 2 days in Brighton.
Brilliant.
Hastings, Norwich, Colchester, Liverpool, Cambridge, Leicester, Hexham, Barnard Castle, Chorley, and then finally in Oxford, which is near where I live.
Wow. So
You're really going all over. Yeah.
Uphill, down, dale.
Great. Well, we're looking forward to seeing it.
Definitely looking forward to seeing it.
Thank you very much indeed. Please come in Brighton. Well, you can come somewhere else if you like, but Brighton will be most convenient for you, wouldn't it? I'll come to you rather than you.
You're bringing the show to our door. It's wonderful.
I think the reason I'm going to these other places is because, at least one person has expressed an interest in those from each place.
It's the best way to do a tour, surely. But thank you so much for making us laugh over the years with the sitcoms, and as we say, really looking forward to seeing you push this show that is going to hopefully help all of us dealing with different things in our life that might be difficult to process at first, but having a few laughs hopefully will help that.
Thank you very much indeed. That's lovely.
So that's The Incurable Optimist, coming to probably a town near you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.